Hey, what's up? I'm Justin. Welcome to 65 Drums. If you want to keep on top of everything eDrum related, hit that subscribe and bell icon so you don't miss any of the new videos. Today I'm talking about the rise of low volume cymbals. Because number one, acoustic drummers love them because they can finally hit the cymbals as hard as they want and it doesn't really, make any sort of noise difference. They're incredibly quiet, sometimes all the way down to 80% quieter than regular acoustic cymbals. And if you've ever played one of these, it's pretty shocking the first time you play them because no matter how hard you hit these things, they barely make a sound. It's awesome. And then also electronic drummers are starting to use them quite a bit because it's really not that hard to convert them into electronic cymbals. You can do it quite easily. Now, doing it right and getting like the best triggering out of it, that is a little bit harder. And sometimes you have to pay someone else to get a special triggering system to convert that into electronic. But there are ways around this and stuff. Today I want to talk about the ones that are the quietest, the ones that sound the best, and just do a complete roundup of all of the low volume cymbals out there that I could find. But we're going to start off this video talking about the really famous companies because those are the ones, odds are, those are the ones you're probably going to run into at your local Sam Ash or Guitar Center because, the music stores usually carry the biggest names first. All right, so let's start with Zildjian because they're the ones that actually started this whole mess, if my research is correct. So the Zildjian L80 cymbals, those are the ones everyone has heard of, and a bunch of us have finally gotten around to playing these. And just a refresher, if you haven't played one of these, Zildjian L80s, the reason why they're called L80s is because they're 80% quieter than regular acoustic cymbals of the same size. And they are incredibly quiet. The quietest low volume cymbals that I could find during my research. These are the quietest ones I could find on the internet. They have a very dull sound, very low tone to them, and the stick definition is incredibly loud. That's the one thing you notice. The stick hitting the metal is louder than the metal reverberating. I believe the L80s also have a special coating on them, which makes them even quieter than they would have been already. So here's the pricing. You can get a set of 14, 16, 18-inch cymbals for $300, 13, 14, 18s for $250, and 13 and 18 for $200. That's the pricing strategy. And of course, I've got to mention the Gen 16 Zildjian cymbals, because I believe these were the first low-volume cymbals out there that everyone knew about. So the first generation were these silver ones, and they had a bit more of a high-pitched sound. The second generation was the bronze look. They basically changed the makeup of them so they were a little more lower pitched. And I can link a great sound comparison video in the description below if you want to hear it. And I just don't like the way the pickups sound when they go through speakers. I don't think it sounds very good at all. I've actually heard these played live and I'm just not a fan. So that's why I don't really recommend these. And they're pretty darn expensive. $1,000 gets you a 14-inch set of hi-hats, 18-inch cymbal, and a 20-inch cymbal. Okay, so now we got to move on to the brand new kid on the block, which is Sabian. They've just released a brand new line of low volume cymbals. And they admit they were not the first ones to be here. Like sometimes a company will release a new product, I'm looking at you, Apple, and pretend that they were the first ones to ever come out with a smartwatch or something. But no, Sabian, in their interviews, they're like, we know we're not the first ones to do this, but we decided to do it better than everyone else. Are they better than everyone else? That's a personal opinion, depending on what kind of volume you're going for and what kind of cymbal tone you're going for. But here's how they price everything up. They're actually undercutting Zildjian a little bit. So they have the most expensive version is $350. Now the reason why that's undercutting Zildjian is because that actually gives you 4 cymbals. You get the hi-hats, you get a couple of crashes, and then you get the ride cymbal on top of that. So $50 more gives you an extra cymbal, and that's a better value than the Zildjian L80s. And then for $230, you get 13, 14, and 18-inch cymbals, and that matches up perfectly with Zildjian's line, which is $20 more. And then the 13-inch hi-hats and 18-inch ride cymbal crash thingy, that's $180 versus $200 for the same thing from the L80s. What gives these cymbals their iconic look is the fact that they're made of stainless steel. Yeah, I didn't think you could use that to make cymbals either. But I mean, the sound isn't terrible. I actually prefer the sound of the L80s a little bit more, but I will say these have a better sustain and the bell sounds a lot better than the Zildjian L80s. But as far as like the tonal quality, just is it pleasing to my ears? Not really. It's kind of like a toss up, but after listening to a bunch of different sound comparisons, I've settled on the fact that I prefer the Zildjian L80s, except for the ride cymbal. I'd actually take one of these Sabian cymbals as my ride cymbal and everything else be the Zildjian L80s. I've linked a really good sound comparison video in the description below. So that's the Sabian lineup. Their big selling points that they're trying to stress in their interviews and stuff is that number one, they're supposed to be like semi-indestructible. They say that competitors, and we all know whenever they say competitors, in any sentence, they're always talking about Zildjian. There's always a feud going on between them. But anyway, they're saying that competitor products are known to break, and this new one, it's supposed to like never break ever. I guess that's because it's made of stainless steel and like the positioning of all the holes and stuff. Also, these new Sabian cymbals are a little bit louder than the Zildjian L80s. They're still quiet, they're still low volume, but they are a little bit louder. Also, the bell is more defined, is a larger cup size, and when you hit the bell, it just sounds a whole lot better. It rings out a little bit more, and those are the advantages of the Sabian line. But all in all, I'd rather take the Zildjian L80s just because they just sound better in my opinion. The Sabian ones, even though they ring out and stuff, they just sound a little too bright and tinny. Not tinny, just too bright for my tastes, all right? And also, that humongous logo that takes up half of the entire cymbal, that just screams practice cymbal, practice cymbal. I'm not a real cymbal, I'm a practice cymbal. So I like the silver look and everything, but I'd prefer the Zildjian L80s in this matchup right here. The next kind of cymbal I want to mention is Aegean or Aegean. I'm not exactly sure how you pronounce this name, but this is a company where they're going premium. They sound way better than the Zildjian L80s or the Sabian cymbals. The only catch is they're incredibly expensive and they're louder than both of those. Because I was going underneath a video where Zildjian was talking about their L80s and people were commenting, and someone said they didn't like the sound of the L80s, and then Zildjian commented and said, hey, we tried to strike a balance between the tone and how nice it sounds and how quiet it sounds, because you can't really have them both happening at the same time. You can't have something that sounds like an A custom and is incredibly quiet. You can't get both of those. So you have to compromise a little bit, and that's what Zildjian did there. What Aegean is doing is they're tilting the scales to a little more of the louder side. They're still quieter than your average acoustic cymbal, but they also sound more like an acoustic cymbal. So it's going to be louder, it's going to be more expensive, but it's going to sound better at the same time. So that's the balance they're trying to strike here. And they do not come cheap. Just a regular pack, 14-inch hi-hats, 18-inch crash cymbal, 20-inch ride, that's going to cost you about $800. It's incredibly expensive, and just one crash cymbal costs what any regular crash cymbal would cost. It costs $250. So these sound incredible, and I'll link a playing example where you can compare the sound, the tone of these versus the Zildjian L80s and the Gen 16s. DrumTech did a great video on that, and you can go listen to it. You can see what I mean. They sound pretty darn good for low volume cymbals, but they're incredibly expensive, and they're going to be a little bit louder. The DrumTech, I actually asked them which ones were loudest, and this is the way they said it. They said the Aegean cymbals are louder than the Gen 16s, the L80s are quieter than the Gen 16s. Aegean is slightly louder than Gen 16, L80 is considerably more silent than the others. Okay, so that was a simple overview. You got the L80s, which are the quietest, and then you got Sabians, which are a little bit louder, a little bit more flashy, and then you got Aegeans, which are probably the loudest of all, but they sound the best, but they're also the most expensive. And that's it, right? And no, there's actually quite a bit of competition out there that the average electronic drummer doesn't know about. So that's what I'm going to run down in this video right here. Let's talk about all the other options out there. So this company, Jobeki, is actually pretty darn well known, and they recently came out with a new line of low volume cymbals. Now their whole twist on the idea is that they're taking these low volume cymbals and they're putting triggers on the back of them, including making the ride cymbal 3-zone with a choke strip. And they're also putting some sort of silencer around the edge of the cymbal, which they say you can actually remove. It doesn't have to be there. But that also makes them even quieter than they were before. Now, Jobeki's been known to make, metal cymbals before, but the idea with this is that you're actually getting a little bit of sustain. You're getting more of a cymbal sound. Meanwhile, their other line, even though they look awesome, they don't really sound like a cymbal. It's just like a tinging sound, sort of like... that's not actually a good example at all. But like if you flicked a music stand that was made of metal, that's kind of what they sound like. But with these, they actually have a little bit of a sustain to them. They sound a little more cymbal-y. So even though they're electronic now because they got the triggers on them, they still sound a little bit like an acoustic cymbal. And again, the price really isn't that bad. Full set, hi-hats, crash, ride, hi-hat controller for €330. So moving on to the next company, we've got WHD. They came out about a year ago, and they sell their cymbals for incredibly low prices. One cymbal costs you anywhere from $65 to $112. Now, their whole twist on the concept is they actually sell packages of low volume cymbals with mesh heads. You can buy them individually, of course, for around $65 to $120, really not that much. Or you can buy the entire package, get a full set of cymbals, just like L80s, and mesh heads that go along with them, and you're getting that for about $283. Basically, you're getting a full set of mesh heads and low volume cymbals for less than $400. That is a really low price, and you can go find this company mostly on Gear for Music and maybe some other places, but that's the one website I found them on. All right, so this is the fun part. Because you hung around to the end of the video, you get to see the really weird low volume cymbals. Now, where can you find these? Alibaba. That's the only place you could possibly find cymbals like this. Now keep in mind, Alibaba, a lot of stuff that's being sold on here, it's more meant for dealers. So what you do is you own a music store, you go on here, they make you buy like 100 items and then they give you a low price. So they might say a minimum order is 500 cymbals, but then they'll sell you each one of those cymbals for like $30 a piece. That's a lot of what happens here on Alibaba in the drums section. But just take a look at some of these cymbals. Literally any color that you want, you can find it here. And I'm not exactly sure how they're achieving some of these colors. Sometimes it looks like some sort of paint or some kind of dye, but I also know like in the cymbal lathing process, you can do things in order to get certain colors. So let's take a look at one of the brands. The first one right here is called Chang. So with Chang, you can actually buy them one at a time. That's one cool thing about this company. You can actually listen to playing examples. I'll try to link to these hi-hats down in the description below where you can listen to a playing example of these. They kind of sound like a mix between the Sabian cymbals and the Zildjian L80s. So I'm not saying go buy from this company. I'm just telling you they exist. And that hi-hat looks kind of sweet, even though I probably wouldn't buy it myself. And if you're really serious about buying low volume cymbals, if you've got to have them all, you can buy from this company. I'm not exactly sure how to say their name, so I'm going to say they're Arboria. Anyway, so the minimum order from this company, you have to buy 5,000 units if you want to buy this package right here. Whenever you're researching low volume cymbals, this company stands out because of the design that they're going with. You got all the regular really small holes that go across the cymbal, but then you have a ring that goes around the bell with really large holes pressed through them. And unfortunately, this does not have an audio example, so I can't tell you how they sound. Now for this next company, unfortunately, I'm not going to spend half the night trying to figure out how to pronounce their name. These cymbals are really interesting, and they range from $10 to $200 a piece. I'm guessing the $200 thing is buying this entire cymbal pack right here. They have a really wide range of colors, and I don't know if you can actually select the color or not. As you can see in this package right here, it ranges from pink to greenish to bluish. Living up to their name, these cymbals are extremely low sound, short sustain. These cymbals have unique design and beautiful color, and are popular for people. And unfortunately, I don't know how these sound because there are no playing examples. I am a big fan of that blue set of hi-hats. Those look amazing. The rabbit hole goes down even farther, believe it or not. There are a lot of companies that make low volume cymbals that you probably have never heard of before. There's a reason why Sabian magically all of a sudden decided to start making low volume cymbals. They noticed that it was basically its own category in and of itself, and that's why they jumped on board. I want to mention one more line of cymbals. These are the FRX line from Sabian that they just announced alongside their quiet tone cymbals. The reason why I'm mentioning this near the end of the video is because they're not actual true low volume cymbals. They're not going to be anywhere near as quiet as L80s or Sabian quiet tones or anything like that. These are like a half step in between regular cymbals and the quiet cymbals. And I think that's really, really cool because they retain all of the tone. They sound incredible. They sound really, really nice. They're made out of the B20 bronze, which is the nicest cymbal alloy that's out there. They basically have some holes drilled into it. The whole idea is that it removes certain high frequencies and it makes it a little bit quieter, but you're still retaining the sound. The whole idea behind these cymbals is that you're using these in smaller venues. So at clubs, weddings, churches, basically places that can't handle really loud volume. But it still retains all of the sound, nearly all the sound of a regular acoustic cymbal. It's using the best alloys out there. It's not tinny and awful sounding like the low volume cymbals, and it's just basically a half step between regular cymbals and low volume. So it's more on the regular cymbal side. As you can see, they still use some drilling techniques that you'll see in other versions of cymbals out there in the market, but they sound really nice. I wanted to mention them near the end of the video. All right, so that's your low volume cymbal roundup video. Hope you guys enjoyed this, learned something about those different brands. Have an amazing day, and I'll see you in a few.